means to me that there's an equality between both sexes with anything that they do, such as political office or getting the same pay for the same job that they do.
Feminism means to me equality for all genders. It doesn't matter if you identify as a male or female, it's just equality for all genders.
Nice.
We should ask her, gender equality. I mean, feminism is just to me gender equality for everybody, not just women.
That's your personal feminism.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you think it's more of an individual journey, or do you think it's as a collective?
I don't think it can be an individual journey because, I may think that a boat of cheese is wonderful,
Yeah.
and I may fight for it in my life, but does that give anybody else a boat of cheese? No. If I think that gender equality is important, and obviously you have to work towards it on an individual level, and you have to consciously think about what you're doing and what you're saying and how you're acting, and you kind of have to think about where that comes from and what that says about you as a person. But it doesn't matter what you do in your personal time if you're not interacting with the community or interacting with other people and expressing your opinions. Then just sitting there and thinking it to yourself doesn't make it come to fruition.
Feminism means to me women empowering women's rights.
Nice.
Okay. I think that feminism is the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes, female and male.
Equality for all genders, so equality of opportunity, equality of pay, just all on the same level.
Okay. I agree with her.
Mainly back in the mid 1900s when women really started pushing for equal rights, especially with the suffrage movement in 1919, I think. 1919. Kind of started a chain reaction of events that still exists today.
Feminism exists because all genders are not equal, and so I feel like feminism kind of became a thing because a large group of people wanted everyone to be equal.
Nice. Okay.
It really skyrocketed in the 60s with the hippie movement and people realized, and the civil rights movement, and people realizing that they can have rights, women realizing they can have rights too. And then there was in 1972 there were more forms of birth control, and then 1975 was it Roe v. Wade was passed?
Yeah.
So women were just getting more rights that had to do with themselves, with their bodies, and it moved on to what they could do in their careers and whatnot.
Feminism exists.
I think it exists because even though we're supposed to have equal rights as men, they still don't.
Okay.
I don't know if this would apply, but I had to write an essay once on genital mutilation or circumcision for women, and someone was trying to tell me that that wasn't a real thing and that women aren't affected by it. It's no, forcing women to do that is problematic, and just because you're a man doesn't make it less problematic.
It went with this kid in my journalism class, and we were just talking about political views or whatever. It was journalism, so that's kind of what that class was about. And he had mentioned that women should not be paid the same as men. And I got a little hot and bothered, but I kind of controlled myself a little bit, and we talked about it. And his view on it was that's the way it always has been, and that's the way it should be. And I think that's a very big point in feminism too, that we should change what we've been doing because that's not the way it should be.
A friend of mine who moved to an area that's very country, very southern, and she has picked up, just from being around a bunch of Confederate flag waving, just very, I don't want to say
they?
People who grew up in an environment where, you know, racial equality, you know, it's more of a thing that they say exists, but it doesn't really exist, you know. And she's from the north, and she spent a lot of time in the south, and she's just recently gone deep south, and you know, she's picked up some things where she's said something in private conversations that I've had to, you know, correct her on, things about like attributing certain undesirable traits to black women, or or saying just some negative things where you kind of have to sit back and say, like, where is this coming from, and you know, why are you saying this? And you can't really generalize one experience with someone to an entire group of people and say that it has to do with their skin color. It makes no sense.
So an instance where I've had to correct someone on a social issue, I'd say, like, whenever my family or myself tells someone where I'm going to college, I say Salem. Everyone always assumes that I'm going to Winston-Salem State because I'm black and it's an HBCU. That I always correct them and tell them, hey, no, I'm going to Salem College. So, yeah.
School dress codes are really sexist. There's been a lot of talk about that. Like, I know the high school I went to, like, I have a friend who's still in high school there. They're like really cracking down on like no wearing like running shorts or leggings or anything, and that's just stupid. And it's like, just because the reasoning is so that the girls don't distract the boys, and that's not right, because it teaches boys it's okay if they're distracted because they can just blame women.
It's pretty serious.
I get really upset when people say ignorant things about gay, lesbian, transgender, like that community, you know?
Yeah.
Non-heterosexual people. It makes me really mad. I get really, really, really mad. And I have to, like, dial it down because I want to, like, start screaming. I had my grandmother, who is a lovely woman, but she's also very, very Southern.
And religious.
And very religious. She's very Christian. When was it? Like 2 weeks ago, asked me. She was very uncomfortable, but she asked me how I felt about homosexuals.
Oh my God! Did she say it just like that, like in Mean Girls?
But not like in a mean way. Like, she was just very awkward saying it, and I had to, like. I started, like, going on this huge thing about, like, biology and how it makes sense evolutionarily, and, like, it's in other species as well. And
right, other species are homosexual too.
Exactly, and it's because it's, you know, it's normal. And how until we went on this long thing, and I got really, really, not agitated, but I got really nervous talking about it, because usually, like, I'm in, like, a screaming fight when I talk about it. And, I don't know, I just feel very passionate. I can't even, like, fathom the idea of treating someone differently just because they don't like somebody who's a different sex than them. It just makes no sense.
I know.
I don't understand it.
About, I'd say, environmental issues in the world. Studies have shown that in the year 2050, most of our ozone will be gone. So I think that it's important to start recycling, preserving light, and trying to find a new way to gain light other than fossil fuels or gain energy.
Also, sexual assault in the military against women is a huge problem.
That's such a bad problem. Because then, like, the women who, like, report, they just end up getting in more trouble than the men who actually, like, raped them.
So how do you think that, well, you kind of already answered this question, but it says, like, how do you think that your movement...
Oh, and why?
Racism, because it still exists.
It has a lot to do with it, because, you know, gender isn't necessarily a biological thing. Like, people identify in different ways.
Yeah.
And it affects not only women, but, you know, trans women, cis women, men, you know, trans men, like, I think it speaks a lot to gender in general in our society, and you know, if you can't be tolerant towards a gay person or a lesbian person or a transgender person or a gender fluid person, you know, then how are you supposed to treat women well, or how are you supposed, you know, it just doesn't make any sense. You can't have one or the other. They kind of
you either have to like accept them all or accept none of them.
Then that's why I think feminism is more than just women. It's, you know, you can't
Gender,
just say women and men are the same, because not everyone identifies as a woman.
Both feminism and the environmental issues movement connect or relate because they both impact people.
Just that it's teaching boys it's okay to blame girls for their problems, which isn't the case at all. Like, I read something online that there's schools that are banning holes in jeans, like even below fingertip length, because that one patch of skin creates mystery, which keeps the boy thinking about what's underneath those jeans the entire class, and then he can't concentrate and he fails his classes. And it's all the girl's fault for wearing like holes in her jeans where you can see the patch of her knee.